far as the offseason has gone, what do you think of what the Cowboys have done? They've been busier than normal anyway.
So obviously they haven't done some of the things that they've been, rumored to be doing soon, right? They haven't traded Lyle Collins. They haven't made a decision on DeMarcus Lawrence. But assuming they move on from Lyle, that move is a little bit, there are a lot of pitchforks out, and I'm chief among them. That move I get. I mean, it sucks. I mean, he's a good player. You're a worse team without him, but he's lost their trust. I mean, I think people forget, he missed the entire 2020 season, showed up, played a game, got suspended. That, makes sense. You don't want to have that guy around. I think it would be foolish to cut DeMarcus Lawrence. I think, and this obviously steers us into the Amari situation. I understand that Amari at $22 million was not the right figure that they wanted him at. I understand that they're more comfortable with Gallup there. I understand they feel like having Gallup and Schultz back is having your cake and eating it too. I think where I'm upset is more from a philosophical standpoint, because it's the same song and dance year after year after year. They wait until all of these players are set to hit the open market, have all of the leverage in the world, and then they have to overpay. And so then they end up in this situation with Amari where it's, well, we can't have that dude at $22 million. That's a high price that we had to pay. We got to cut him. Well, that deal is your fault. The DeMarcus Lawrence deal is their fault. They tagged him twice, and he threatened not to get shoulder surgery, and so they had to overpay. So, I mean, I don't want to cry about spilt milk or live in the past, but if they were more forward-thinking in years past, this situation would not be what it is.
The transactional nature of the way Steven seems to handle business, I think annoys a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, think about it, like just in a vacuum this year. So and first of all, it's annoying that all of this is like blabbed by everybody. I mean, like the Cowboys are the only team who's like full offseason blueprint is like naked and exposed to the entire NFL world. But okay, we want to trade Amari Cooper. We want to cut Amari Cooper, but we want to sign Michael Gallup and Dalton Schultz to replace his lost production. Say the four of us represent either of those players. You have just like handed us all of the leverage in the world. They traded Amari before they even agreed to terms with Gallup. And so I don't understand why you would openly do this. And in a similar vein, if DeMarcus Lawrence is somebody to move on from, they're going to have to keep Randy Gregory to help sort of, suffice for his loss. He needs a new deal. So I'm like, why are you so public and so forthcoming with all this information? And these three players, Gallup, Schultz, and Gregory, if the Cowboys want to sit here atop Mount Pius and say, no, we this is part of our plan. We always knew we were going to cut Amari in 2022. Then why didn't you extend Gallup or Schultz last year? If you were truly this forward-thinking franchise, yeah, exactly. And people say, well, now you get Gallup, because he tore his ACL, you get him for cheap. Why are you bragging about this? Like, that's not like a point of pride that they were right and that he got hurt and tore his ACL in January. So if they had an ability to forecast not just the market, but their own situation, things would be a little bit less expensive in the overall.
Joined by RJ Ochoa, blogging with the boys. RJ, before we get to why you can't stand the Gallup deal, any truth to the people that you talk to about this rift between Amari and Dak, and Amari allegedly calling Dak a black Kirk Cousins? Is that any truth to that? Because I lean in toward the side that that's not true, that was never said. But regardless if that was said or not, was there a rift between the two?
I don't think so. I mean, I certainly can't speak to that exact accusation. But I definitely don't think so. I think sometimes, a tweet just takes off and
I think so too.
Fact that wasn't. But I don't know if I think this, but I think that Amari's vaccination status, was not something that everybody loved throughout the season. And so if you are, if you've got a tinfoil hat sized up and ready, I'm 7 3/8. I mean, that's the path to go down. But even then, I don't know that is necessarily, something that is totally true and legitimate.
Do you think Cooper wanted out?
I think he wanted his money. I think he wanted to stay on that contract. And so, I think Amari's a great businessman. We hear that all the time. He's really smart. He read Shoe Dog by Phil Knight and everything, and wants to start an empire. And so he gets to do that. I mean, I think this is just a job for Amari at this point. I will say, as dumb as I think it is to move on from him, he's now been moved on twice from, by two different teams, and so that generally when that happens, that is interesting at the very least. It's funny that it happened just days after the Bears moved on from Khalil Mack, so the Raiders kind of, that has sort of aged well for them. But it's hard to really dog Amari. I mean, he's really just kind of done exactly what's been asked of him. And I think where he's gotten a raw deal here is this framing that the Joneses have done about, well, we expected him to take a leap as a number one wide receiver. He did not get the same target share volume as a Devontae Adams or a Cooper Kupp or a Justin Jefferson. So in that sense, if you're not going to use him like a $20 million wide receiver, then yeah, you shouldn't have him on your team. But you should use him like a $20 million wide receiver is kind of my point.
If with all this that you didn't like, with the Gallup deal, the Amari jersey collecting dust now, if it results in them being able to sign Bobby Wagner, is that A-okay in RJ's eyes? And do you even think that that's a legit possibility that Bobby Wagner ends up with the Cowboy uniform?
I think we're going to hear a lot of players in the coming days that, have interest in the Cowboys and the Cowboys have interest in, because, it ups their price tag with whoever they're negotiating with. And so Bobby Wagner would be fine. I mean, and, depending on what happens with DeMarcus Lawrence, if you have to play Micah Parsons more as an edge rusher, you obviously weaken your linebacker depth. And so Bobby Wagner can help you out there. Where I worry is the Cowboys are coming off, and I know we talked about this last time I was here, the Cowboys are coming off of a free agency last year where they were really successful at these kind of bargain bin value signings. And I worry that they are going to double down, not just on that philosophy, and it wouldn't even need to be doubling, it'd be like quadrupling down, but double down on those players specifically. And I love Jaron Kearse. If you look in our comment section or our Twitter follow, that's
Me too.
Sign Jaron Kearse, bring Jaron Kearse back, etc. I mean, he had an incredible year last year that by far looks like the outlier on his career. It's very possible that, Dan Quinn unearthed something special and he's just going to turn into this Hall of Fame safety at this point. But it's also very possible that he just had a remarkable season for a number of different factors, obviously a lot of them his own skill set, and that's just going to fizzle and fade. And he's going to be the latest guy. I mean, in late October, there's going to be tweets like "Kearse sucks, bench him, whatever, blah blah." I can't believe we paid him.
Right.
I mean, like you cannot just. So many teams and people think that you can just like come back and on September 8th or whatever it is, pick up where you lost against the 49ers in the wild card round. You cannot. You have to climb the whole mountain all the way again. And I don't know that signing Jaron Kearse back is doing that. I don't know that re-signing Michael Gallup is doing that. Like doing the same thing over and over again is obviously the definition of insanity.
But RJ, $12 million for a guy who arguably with their best deep ball catcher, the best in traffic, sidelines, $12 million, you saving $10 million. What is it about the deal that you don't like with Michael Gallup?
So there's a lot of murmuring that it's effectively a 2-year deal with a base value of $6 million this year, which would be even friendlier to your point.
Right.
And I love Michael Gallup. He's awesome. He's a great person. Y'all know that. Y'all have talked to him. Like his story is remarkable.
Right. Super
happy for him and his family. And the take generally is, man, this is a great value for a wide receiver too. Look at what wide receiver twos are getting in the NFL. Cool. I don't want a wide receiver too. You know what I mean? Like
right.
it would be like, if we were shopping for a car and I needed like a Navigator and you were like, dude, this Corolla, you're getting a great deal on the Corolla.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that's not the Galaxy Corolla, but
no,
I don't need a Corolla, and that's, I don't need that. And so like, just because in a vacuum, it's a great deal, doesn't mean that the overall is great. Yes, it's a great deal in a vacuum, but it's the totality of it all. It's moving on from Amari. It's probably not making any other additions. Maybe you get lucky and Chris Olave or whoever falls to you at 24, but you are potentially going to be in this boat now. And yes, the deal is awesome and you'll feel great that you are paying him at an efficient rate, but that doesn't necessarily improve your football.
But isn't CD the one? He's supposed to be, right?
Or is he a slot receiver?
I mean,
supposed to. I said supposed to, all caps.
That's the thing. Like, CD's best work does come from the slot. So, okay, Michael Gallup's playing outside. Who else is playing outside? And that, like, Cedric Wilson's another one. I love Cedric Wilson. But all these Cowboys fans, the same fans who moaned and groaned are like, all we got to do is bring back, and then they list all the players who are free agents. And we'll be good. Even though that same cast, that same ensemble wasn't good enough, that offense wasn't good enough. So what makes you think that, a trio of Gallup and Cedric and CD even in the slot is good enough when it failed so many times last season, especially down the stretch? And so that's what's frustrating. And even the Gallup, like the injury thing, Now it's like people are arguing over ACLs. Like, ACLs are no longer the things they used to be 5 years ago. Totally true. But this is an incredibly important season. It is a dire season for the Dallas Cowboys. He's going to miss all of OTAs, all of minicamps, all of training camp, probably all of preseason. Not that that's a really big deal. Maybe he is ready for the beginning of the regular season. Like, why would you create this, this focus group that is so dangerous when everything is riding on it? And maybe that's unfair to Gallup, but that's the boat that they've kind of put themselves on.
Well, given that, and you talked about the draft coming up and maybe Olave falls deep, with the moves or lack thereof, how has that affected the draft? Because I've really felt like where they were sitting, it was going to be an interior lineman, offensive or defensive. Has that scope opened up a little bit now? Is a wide receiver now maybe something they would look at to draft higher in your mind?
I think it has to be. I mean, I think it's a bigger need than it was.
Right.
It's certainly a bigger need than when they drafted CD, and it was kind of a sneaky need then. And so, yeah, I mean, and that's the reality. Like, that's also like, why are you upset, RJ? It's because they are a worse football team today than they were on Saturday afternoon before they traded away Amari Cooper. Congratulations to Michael Gallup. Again, I hope it provides generational wealth for him and his family. But the Cowboys and their success for this season is compromised. And maybe they do feel like they are better without Amari for whatever reason. They want to move on, et cetera. But the math of this just doesn't make sense. Like, you may not like doing integral functions, but like, you cannot just like erase them from the equation and solve it. Like, if it's written there, you have to do it. And so the Cowboys are going to have to do this. And they've now created this, scenario where, Rob, if Chris Olave doesn't fall, if they have to run it with this group or whatever. I mean, and Cedric Wilson might not even return. Like, that's another thing. But so now the blame is, well, look at Dak Prescott. Dak can't get it done. Dak is this, Dak whatever. McCarthy this, McCarthy that. And I mean, some of that will be true, but some of it won't be true. It'll be greatly exaggerated. And so it's frustrating to look at, this morning the Green Bay Packers re-signed Preston Smith after bringing back Aaron Rodgers, after tagging Devontae Adams. It seems like these hurdles and these obstacles only exist for the Cowboys. And like the New Orleans Saints are rumored to be in the hunt for Deshaun Watson.
Right.
Like, how are the Cowboys unable to read the like salary cap for dummies book that every GM has on their shelf?
Hey, RJ, how is the worst contract on the team not being talked about? And I'm speaking of Zeke. He's kind of like is in the corner, like, don't look back here. Nobody say anything about me. To me, it's the worst contract on the team.
I mean, it might be the worst contract in the NFL.
But it's untouchable, though. They can't do anything.
But, I mean, like, you're right. But, Jared Goff's contract was untouchable. Carson Wentz's contract was untouchable. And the Eagles and Rams took on massive amounts of dead cap money in the name of getting better. In the name of purging and being good. We understand it's dead cap, but we'll deal with it. We'll still find a way because we want to be better as a football team. Again, I love Zeke. I'm super happy. He won. He got in a fight with Stephen Jones, and I mean, it didn't even go 10 rounds and knocked him out. And again, I really hope that is going to provide generational wealth for him and his family. But the problem with that is, I mean, you're right. Nobody talks about it. And Zeke has these hardo, fanboys that are like, quit talking about Zeke. He's amazing. Zeke sucks. I mean, like, he's it's really
he's a warrior, RJ.
He's past his prime,
he's a
RJ.
warrior.
And that, Rob, that warrior comment that Stephen Jones had, like, that's what's frustrating because there's a high level of nepotism and favoritism when it comes to Zeke because he's a chosen son of the Joneses. They love him and they feed me and the shirts and all this stuff. And Zeke feeds the narrative. Zeke feeds the idea that all they care about is money and branding and marketing, et cetera. Because if they truly cared about success in the football team, he wouldn't be involved. I mean, think like Stephen bragged and Jerry bragged and McCarthy bragged about Zeke, having the partial PCL tear and playing through it. You're stupid. Like, why? You had a fully healthy Tony Pollard available and you went after this. And so, yeah, Amen. I mean, I'm with you. I'm with you, Rudy. Zeke's contract is terrible. But the same dude who authored it is the one who's trying to convince all these people that he just got Michael Gallup for a steal, and they're buying it. Like, all the people who today are like, in my mentions, RJ, you're just being a hater. You're crying. You're a loser, blah, blah. Same people who were moaning and groaning a month ago, this front office can never get it right. The offensive woes have subsided. The first good thing that they feel like has happened to their guy, their own Cowboy. Now they're back. Super Bowl or bust. The sickness continues. This is part of it all. We just have to vomit in the morning. It's terrible.
There you go.
My man.
RJ
Bringing it as
Ochoa
always.
woke up, chose violence.